And now, it's time for Healing from Within with your host, Tony Valen.
Welcome to Healing from Within. I'm your host, Tony Valen. You can contact me at tony@tonyvalen.com or visit our website, healingfromwithin.net. Joining us on today's show is Joanna Gerard. Joanna is a renowned psychic, medium, astrologer, and metaphysical educator. Born in Florida, Joanna holds a degree in communications and education. Joanna combines the spiritual with the pragmatic, the practical with the surreal. You can follow Joanna at www.joannagerardpsychic.com, JoannaGerard, psychic.com. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tony. How are you? Thank you.
Fine, thank you. Did I say your name correctly? I always mutilate names.
It was perfect, Joanna. Yep.
Oh, Joanna, perfect.
Yep.
Sorry, I have a sister also named Joanna, and sometimes I call her Joan or something. So, so let's get started. Tell us who Joanna Gerard is.
Oh, I'm just a normal girl who can communicate with spirits. I don't know, who am I? I mean, I'm so many different. Like everybody else, I have so many different dimensions to my personality. This is just one thing that I do. That's grown, obviously, over the years. Like you have stated, I have a degree in communications and one in education. I work with disabled students. And that is one of my passions, is helping them, along with some other, things. We discussed animals and all that. So I try to use what God gave me in a variety of different ways. It's not just for the readings and the people that set appointments with me, but it's for anyone out there. I use it with my with teaching too. Because we have to be willing to communicate in different ways. So it was just meant to be, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. And when did you discover that you had your gifts, and exactly what are your gifts that you use to help people?
Well, I was always into or interested in the metaphysical world, even really, really young. My mom was into it, so I grew up with astrology books around the house and stuff, and I remember being like 7 or 8 years old and looking through them and reading them even then and just being like really interested in it. And my great-grandmother was a psychic, and she did basically what I do now. She did it kind of like for a living. She was in Ireland and would read for people, but she used tea leaves, I believe. So what happened with me was I knew there was something to it, so I would have a lot of dreams that would happen in my life, and I was really into astrology, like I said, and I'm a little bit of the obsessive type, so I kind of took it to another level, and I became really into it and started doing charts. And when I would do the charts, because it's complicated, you can't like give up on astrology, because it gets like you got to find the final dispositor and you got to look at the houses and the aspects. It's like a puzzle.
Right.
When I would do the charts, I would things would just come in, and I would be able to know things about people that weren't necessarily something you'd see from an astrology chart. And people would be like, you did my chart. And, of course, I started doing all this stuff for free. It wasn't like a business or anything at that point. And and they would say, this happened and that happened and all this stuff that you wrote down happened. And bottom line is, I am a teacher also. I went through a situation a couple of years ago with just a horrendous administrator. It was about 5 years ago. And he kind of cornered me. And during this time, I was just focusing on my metaphysical stuff. Mm-hmm. And this lady said to me, I'm going to let you work for me. She owned a store, and she said, if you're good, you're going to work for free. I'm going to hire you. And I guess I was, because I was there for a couple of years, and there I built a client base from that point. So as far as what I do, I mean, I'm definitely, I'm a psychic. I can tell people what's going to happen, what has happened. I do medium stuff too, but I can't control that as much as I can the psychic stuff. I can't always, for sure say that somebody's going to come in, and if they do, it's usually a picture with me, and I can see the person, or I'll hear it, and I know that sounds crazy, when you say you hear it, but I do. It's like my own head giving me the information. It's not really an outside voice telling me. And then, I do the astrology. I don't do so much astrology anymore, but it's always kind of in the back. It was kind of my gateway into all this. So I do a lot of teaching astrology and stuff like that nowadays.
Awesome. Well, you filled my head with all these questions that I want to ask you now. For the sake of the audience, can you explain what metaphysical is?
Well, I think the actual definition means beyond the physical, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know if that's what it means. I could just be making that one up.
What I'm trying to say is I want to know what it means to you. I when it comes to books, we are all intuitive. You're very intuitive, so I'm interested in what you think or what you think it is or what it is to you.
To me, it's seeing the unseen, being able to tap into, I don't want to say just energies, but what the average person or, can't see, or what we're on this planet. It's planet Earth. It's not the easiest planet to be on, right? So,
right.
So I think it's going beyond this planet is basically what it is, into, I don't want to say other dimensions, but I kind of have my own theory on that. And, but that's what it is. It's just seeing beyond the seeable from what's here, from what's on this planet.
Wonderful. And you were talking about your grandmother. Now, did your grandma teach you anything, or did she talk about it, or you just happened to pick up on it?
This was my great-grandmother, and I never met her. This is just stuff that was told to me, and my mom herself used to do readings. But, it's one of those kind of things, and it's tricky because it can be a very draining job.
Right.
So, so my mom was super young when she started, and she had little kids, and she just was like, I just can't handle this with little kids, because honest to God, you see things you don't want to see sometimes, So I was a little bit older when I started really doing it, so maybe I was able to handle it a little bit better. But I also think that, I don't know, it's just you have to push through that difficult stuff, and it's not always pleasant.
Absolutely. So, now, being that you're a medium, does your grandmother come to you or talk to you in any way, shape, or form?
I don't read for myself at all.
Oh,
the only way I get any kind of information is if I dream it, or, I'll get a flash of something and I'll know something's going on. To be honest with you, I think that a lot of those people that have passed away are communicating with all of us a lot, and they come in the form of just thoughts. It's just, you get a feeling, oh, don't do this. And we call it our intuition, but I think really what it is we're communicating at that point.
I agree. That's the thing with me. My mother has passed on, and I was very close to her. But my father also passed on. But I have to tell you that in life, I was closer to my mother. But now at the afterlife, my dad is always with me. And it's just like you said, it's perfect the way you said it. I am doing something that has nothing to do with anything about family or mom or whatever. All of a sudden, a little thought will pop in, and I know it's my mother checking up on me, just saying, make sure I'm okay.
Right.
So it's amazing.
It's pretty neat. I also like to listen to, I believe in signs from nature, certain things that will happen, and I believe in signs from music. There's certain songs, and if you hear the same song over and over again, you're being told something. So you have to listen to those words. So I do believe in the symbolic part of things, and I guess it's just keeping an open mind and being aware that there's so much around us that we're not even, aware of on a physical level usually. So it's kind of being open to all of that, and openness is really important with this kind of work, because I've said on other shows I've been on before, I don't give people time. I refuse to give time. And so sometimes the stuff I say will happen the next day, and sometimes it'll be years later, and people will call me or email me or whatever and tell me this happened, and you said this was going to happen a long time ago. And it's just not very a cut and dry kind of thing,
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I know, because I'm the same way. I cannot give time because I don't know if what I'm receiving is from the past or the future. It may even be the present. So sometimes they may tell us, no, I don't agree with that. That doesn't make any sense. But then later on, they will get back to you and say, oh, my God, you're not going to believe what happened. And I say, oh, yeah, I believe.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and we're all guilty of that. If anybody's been to a psychic, you're like, I don't really know what they're talking about. And then later on they end up being correct.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
But I just refute. People will be like, when? I'm like, I'm not going to give you the information because I don't want them to be expecting it because I'm just guessing time. I'm really guessing. And then it doesn't happen in a certain time frame. And if it's something that they want to happen, then they're going to be all upset. So I just would prefer just to keep it open. And, one of my first readings, I remember this years ago, I brought up something with this guy. He was like, I cannot believe you brought this up. It had happened 20 years earlier with him and his wife, and it was the first thing that I said when he sat down. So I think it's a little bit of tapping into their subconscious too,
Right, yeah.
It's all about the hidden, basically. That's what this stuff is.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. What can a person expect with one of your readings?
Well, basically the way it works is nowadays, because I do have a lot of appointments, I do the majority of them on the phone and, or email. People will say, well, how do you do that? Well, to me, I don't use tarot cards and I don't necessarily have to touch anybody, or it really helps me focus if I'm not with the person sometimes because I don't get distracted by other energies around me. I have a system down where I sit by myself and I focus in on that one person. Basically, I don't ask questions. I mean, I might ask your birthday, but I just go. And one of my things with psychics is because I've been doing this a while and I know a lot of them, you don't want to go to somebody who talks about themselves in a reading. You just don't want to waste your money on it. And you really don't want somebody to ask too many questions to begin with. That's why I feel like I hate to say I'm a business person because that's not naturally who I am, but I probably become a business person with time from doing this. But I don't like to waste people's time, and I don't really want people wasting my time. So I'm as soon as, they get on the phone with me, I just go. And I always tell them to either tape it or take notes because I just jump around so much. And like we discussed, I do the medium stuff too. So if somebody wants to come in, I'll be talking about them, and then I'll be talking about their job. And it's hard to I think for my clients sometimes it's hard to take it all in because I talk so much and so quick. So I always tell them at least take notes, just jot things down, and then they'll read it over later or they'll listen to it later, and then they'll say things, these things happen or whatever. It's just you get a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Right, yeah. And sometimes, they'll come back and they'll say, remember that you said this? You don't remember because the information is coming at you so fast and you're just spilling it out.
I remember nothing, I say. I mean, it is, minutes later, you're probably the same way, and it's because we're actually channeling. So it's not, I've said things, I just said that to my mom just recently. I'm like, you need to get your tires rotated. And then I'm like, what does that mean, get your tires rotated? And she was laughing. Yeah. She goes, well, the mechanics just told me that a couple months ago, but I didn't even know what it meant. I just heard tires rotated. And so, I was channeling a mechanic, obviously, because I say things and I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. I don't want to give people legal advice or medical advice, but sometimes I'll say things and it's not in my realm of education, and it ends up being true. So it's hearing those words. And, sometimes it's hard because sometimes it feels like you're not really necessarily making sense when you talk about, who made spaghetti or whatever, but you have to say it because it's there. They want you to repeat it, obviously.
Right, it means something. That's just like I was going to say, you reached out to one of my production people. You reached out to Larry, my production guy, and you mentioned something about pipes under the sink. So now he's all paranoid about the pipes, and he's going to make sure that he watches them because I'm sure something's going to happen. Because you were spot on everything you told him. Deception of money, a heavy-set woman with a smile and a kicker. And the kicker was the older gentleman with the red truck on the side of the road watching, on the other side watching over, his sister, which is his grandpa. You were spot on, and it was awesome, and he really appreciates the reading you gave him.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed reading for him, and that was an email one, right? So it was.
Absolutely.
I just sat there and focused, which I don't even understand how I do it. I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't necessarily get it. It's just if I sit, and it does sound kind of crazy, but I can sit in front of my computer and just focus on somebody, just picture somebody, and then all of a sudden it's boom, 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 whatever comes in my head. And I literally saw those pictures So that was more of the clairvoyant thing versus the clairaudient thing. I actually saw that red truck, and I knew it was somebody that had passed over. But I do love doing the medium work, probably even more than the psychic work, because I think in the end, I'm giving those people validation that we don't really die, and that, that's what spiritually makes me feel better, on a regular basis.
And it helps them as well.
Yeah. You can only have, people, the psychic, is he going to call me? Is he going to call me? When is he going to call me?
Yeah.
So, and not that I don't like doing the psychic stuff. It's just that I get emotionally more out of doing the medium stuff.
Yeah, it's the healing, and that's what I try to do with this show. That when I guess for the general public, whenever someone passes on, it just seems so final. It seems like we'll never hear from them again, and it's the loneliness that just makes us feel so detached from our loved ones. And when a medium comes along and you're able to open up that communication again and at least give them reassurance that they're okay, that is healing, and that helps someone move forward in this world and spirit to move forward in their world. You agree?
Right, and I do. I totally agree, and I think that one of the important things that we need to remember about when those we love do pass over is that this planet that we're on, we're only meant to be here a short amount of time, and it feels like it's a long time only because that time thing isn't linear, like we talked about before. That's why I don't give time. So when it's time for somebody, like it's almost like a job that's done and it's ready for them to move on, they moved up or whatever, they got promoted. When it's time, and it doesn't mean we're not going to see them again. It's just they're in, like, I just try to think of it like a different, job, basically.
Yeah,
like they've moved on to a different job. And every once in a while, you're going to connect with them, and I think some of us just have an easier time connecting with them, and I think that goes along with the heightened sensitivity of what we do. So, but, it's easy to go crazy as a psychic and medium, too, because you are constantly bombarded with other people's stuff. So, a fine line.
And I was going to ask you, because I know that the way it all started with me was more like the empath thing. I'd walk into a public place, a crowd of people, and all of a sudden I would feel happy, sad, angry, crazy. I felt all these things, and I didn't know why I was feeling this way. I could bust into tears or bust into laugh, and I had no clue where it was coming from. I finally learned to protect myself, and that seemed to stop that crazy. But I hear you, because it's very draining, and you can go crazy. And when it's first coming to you, you feel like you're kind of, what is it when you hear voices in your head? I forgot the mental illness. Oh, well, whatever. You feel like that.
Schizophrenia, yeah.
Schizophrenia, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Well, God knows how many people that have been diagnosed with that actually are, have some ability going on there too. But, the anxiety thing is huge. And I think most of us that do this, because when you do walk into a room, you're like, why do I feel this way? I've walked into rooms before, and I'm like, I just got to go. There's been certain stores that I just can't go into because I just can't take it. And it took me a long time to realize that it's because I'm just sensitive to other people's stuff. So, and you don't even logically know, like you were saying, you're not like, oh, it's this person next to me. It's just, my web designer and I have a funny story about that. When we met at Panera one time, and he could not, because I have a lot of problems, I don't know if you do with electronic stuff, because my frequency gets high. So he had his laptop, and we're going over some stuff, and I was like, Joe, he couldn't get online. I'm like, we got to move. And I was like feeling really nervous. And he's like, why? What's going on? And I'm like, we got to move away from this table behind me because this lady behind me has a ton of problems.
Oh, my God.
And I'm picking up on it, and it's not making your computer work. So he's like, whatever, he kind of knows I'm crazy, and he's a really good guy. So he's like, all right, let's just move. So we move over to the other side of the room, and immediately the computer starts working. But I knew enough to know it was somebody next to me that was just throwing my energy off. It was just making me like so nervous that it was screwing up all the electronics and stuff around me. So, it happens kind of a lot. I'll be like, let me walk away from this computer for a second, and then it'll work. And it does. So, yeah, we're just energy,
Yeah, absolutely. And, you asked me about electronics. It's funny that I don't do that to my electronics, but I do that to other people. Sometimes people want to take a picture with their cell phone or something with me or something. They try to pull up the camera, and it won't come up, or the phone stops, or I'll be talking to people, and we get into a point where it's really getting interesting and gone. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, this is Tony. Yeah. I was just going to say that I'm Tony Valen, host of Healing from Within. You can follow our show, healingfromwithin.net, or directly contact me, Tony at TonyValen.com. And we are joined by Joanna Gerard, www.joannagerardpsychic.com. Now, Joanne, what other types of services do you offer?
I do obviously the readings, but I don't say just a medium reading or just a psychic reading. It's combined into one thing. I teach astrology classes. I do astrology tutoring. I teach classes in psychic development, and I do events. And I'm huge. And as I get more into what I'm doing, I'm real big into charity stuff. But I do, and that's really pretty much the free stuff I do. I mean, I will, because you and I talked about this, I have to have boundaries with what I do, because I am in a position where people try to take advantage, obviously, and I'm human, even though I do this. So I can't be getting phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning and all this stuff. But I do a lot of animal stuff, any kind of animal rights group I'm all for, and I'll do raffles for free with them to help the animals. Anything with kids with disabilities I'm willing to do. Just as long as I know the money is going to them, and not somebody's new car. So
absolutely,
yeah. But it is a gift. So I feel like I'm here for a reason to do it. And if I have a gift, and I think that anybody, because so many people are gifted in so many different ways, I really do think it's our responsibility to use it for those who need it too. And when I say that, I don't mean just call me, random person and say, oh, my husband, and I are getting divorced, I need a free reading. I'm saying those who really cannot defend themselves, which of course is always animals and children.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful. And when we use our gifts in such a way, I feel that we're fulfilling our soul's mission. That's the way I feel about it. What is the fundamentals? What are the fundamentals of astrology interpretation course?
Oh, well, that starts off. Astrology is so funny because I'll teach that class and people will take it over and over again like 5 times.
Really?
And be like,
wow.
Because they'll be like, I want to go over, they just forget. For whatever reason, and I'm not like, I was never great at math or science or any of those kind of things in school, but astrology I picked up really easy, probably from a past life. Once I started it, I would just remember everything about charts. I would remember what, Neptune squaring Venus means, and it just sunk in really quick. But basically what I do with that stuff is I just start with the basics of astrology, which is the signs and, what element they are and all that kind of stuff. But then it goes into more detail. And I might be a little bit too detail-oriented, and that's why they take the class over and over, because they're like, well, you're losing me, because you have to, it sounds, because it's astrology and everybody believes in it, but you really have to do your own studying with this. I try to give them homework. But they, you have to do your own research. And obviously, it's a science or a pseudoscience or whatever, and you have to kind of make your own interpretations. Once you know the planets and what they signify, and the houses and what they mean, and you kind of start to put it together. But a lot of times people have trouble remembering that, so they end up taking it over and over. And then at the end, I usually will do people's charts for them, in the class. But I don't always, because I am so busy, I don't always offer those classes. But when I do, I usually have a pretty fair turnout with that.
Yeah, and it sounds mathematical. Is there a lot of math involved in astrology or what you do?
Well, I call mine intuitive astrology because I don't use a lot of, old school. They would do them by hands, right, with all the geometric computations and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays we can print it out and I can pretty much do it from there. But it's a puzzle. It's really you start with the rising sign, and then you find the ruler of the rising sign, and you see what house that's in, and you see any aspects, and then you go from there, well, what's the ruler of the ruler? So it's like this long, drawn-out process, and sometimes people will be interested in astrology, but they're just not willing to – they're just not like me about it, like, obsessive about it. They're just like, okay, I've learned enough. Because it does get to that point where you're going to further it or you're going to stop because it just becomes too much information.
Yeah. And how long does it take to come up with someone's chart from start to finish?
Well, it takes me about probably 3.5 to 4 hours.
Wow.
To do a chart. Yeah, that's why. I have like I said, I'm a Scorpio. I have Mars and Uranus conjunctus, and I like things quick. I'm kind of impatient, so I always tell people, if you just want to know what's going on, just get a reading with me. The astrology is more for people that are really kind of interested in astrology, because I'm going to do a lot of predictive stuff with it's good for, like, let's say you don't know what kind of career you want to go into, or, that kind of stuff. It is good for that kind of stuff because it shows strengths in the chart and it shows weaknesses. Of course, we do have free will, to a certain degree, and people can choose the positive or the negative, but it would help. It helps people with that kind of stuff. Like, this is the kind of field that you would be good at, But I do so much more of the other stuff now just because it's quicker and to the point, and it's not quite as complicated. Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. So it's like a map of their traits, their qualities, their characteristics, and talents, I guess, correct?
Exactly. That's what it is. And I remember, I guess I'm one of the first astrologers I went to. I was about 20, and he said, your whole life is about helping other people. And I'm not trying to say I'm any kind of saint, but let's face it, I am a teacher, and and I do this, and so it obviously was in my chart that I was supposed to be doing this. You look at aspects with the 12th house, the 4th house, and the 8th house, and I have a lot of water, and a lot of it is in the 12th house. I'm like a triple Scorpio, and it's all in the 12th.
Wow.
So the 12th house rules the subconscious and all things hidden, so dreams and stuff like that. So, and what's funny about charts is they're genetic too, just like anything else. I mean, if you looked at somebody's grandfather's chart, there'd be similarities a lot of times, to the grandchildren or whatever. The placement of the planets would be similar quite often, not always, but often.
Right. And I know that you also teach psychic development courses. What is your method of teaching psychic development courses? Do you just, is it more like on-the-job training and you do readings, or is it an actual class that you, like a teacher would, because you're an educator?
Both. I mean, I always have a lesson plan, right? But yeah, of course, I like to impress everybody and show off with my ability at the beginning of every class. So I always give little psychic shout-outs to my students. But no, we go through exercises with those kind of classes, and it's just different ways to kind of focus. Like I'll do this thing where I'll light a candle and I'll just stare at the candle and I'll have like a piece of paper in front of me, and I guess it's sort of like automatic writing, and I can write stuff down. One time I did it years ago, and I wrote down captain, I think, and something with parasites. It was really bizarre, and I'm like, whatever, Then I actually met this lady, just met her, and she was saying, my brother's so sick. We can't figure out what's wrong with him. And I go, what's he do? And she's like, he was a captain on a boat. And I'm like, did you check for parasites? And because I had gone like around the world and stuff, and she's like, no, we never did. But they obviously wanted me to talk to. That's what I'm saying. There's so much to synchronicity, and you get those thoughts and you get those feelings. And I tell everybody to try to pay attention, even if it seems crazy when you're thinking it, because there's usually something to it.
Awesome.
And that's what happens. Yeah.
Well, Joanna, thank you so much for being on the show with us. We're running out of time. Our thanks to Joanna Gerard, renowned psychic, medium, astrologer, and metaphysical educator. Again, you can follow and contact Joanna at www.joannagerardpsychic.com. You are listening to Healing from Within with Tony Balin on Blog Talk Radio, airing Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. On Blog Talk, and you can also reach me through the healingfromwithin.net website. Thank you so much, and you all have a great week.